You're 3 days into a grid-down scenario. Your bug-out bag is gone. Maybe you had to ditch it running from looters. Maybe it got stolen while you slept in that gas station bathroom. Doesn't matter. You're down to what's in your pockets and whatever you can scavenge from the CVS you just broke into. Pop quiz. What kills more people in survival situations? Lack of equipment or lack of knowledge? Here's what I know with absolute certainty. The guy with $10,000 in tactical gear and zero understanding of physics dies in the same 4 days as the idiot who thought his phone would work. But the person who understands material science and creative problem solving? They're making fire with a 9-volt battery they pulled from a smoke detector. Let me paint you a picture of what actually happens. 99% of people are carrying items right now that could save their lives in a dozen different ways. They have no idea. They've been programmed by every survival show and prepper YouTube channel to think they need specialized equipment. Ferro rods, titanium sporks, mylar blankets with the exact right thickness. Meanwhile, they're walking around with a Walmart bag, some dental floss, and a handful of items that could mean the difference between hypothermia and warmth, between infection and wound closure, between dehydration and clean water. Today, I'm going to show you the unexpected items that could save your life. Not the gear they're selling you. Not the stuff on Amazon wish lists. The random ordinary objects sitting in your bathroom drawer or your desk at work right now that have legitimate survival applications backed by physics, chemistry, and field testing. Here's your choice right now. You can keep scrolling and stay in the 99% who think survival is about buying the right gear. Or you can spend the next 22 minutes learning what the prepared 1% actually understands about resourcefulness. If you want to be part of the 0.1% who can improvise their way through anything, hit subscribe. Drop a comment with the most unexpected item you've ever used in an emergency. Let's get tactical. Let's start with something every woman carries and every man should. Tampons. I can already hear the testosterone brigade clicking away. Stay with me. A tampon is compressed sterile cotton wrapped in waterproof packaging. Run that through your tactical brain for a second. Here's what I mean. One tampon expands to hold roughly 15 milliliters of liquid. That's its designed purpose. But here's the kicker that most people never consider. That same expansion property makes it perfect for wound packing. You've got a puncture wound, knife, shrapnel, doesn't matter. You need to pack that wound to control bleeding, and you sure as hell don't have quick clot combat gauze. You've got a tampon in your girlfriend's purse. Unwrap it. Insert it into the wound cavity. It expands, it absorbs, it applies pressure from the inside out. Is this sterile field surgery? No. Will it get infected? Probably. But here's the physics. You stop bleeding out in 4 minutes. You can deal with infection in 4 hours. Priorities. But it gets exponentially better because tampons are also fire-starting tinder that's already waterproofed in individual packaging. You pull apart that compressed cotton into fine strands. You've just created a surface area multiplier for combustion. One spark from a lighter you found in a car, from striking a rock against your belt buckle, from shorting a battery. That cotton catches and burns hot enough to ignite larger kindling. The wrapper keeps it dry until the exact moment you need it. While everyone else is trying to start fires with damp newspaper or bark they peeled off a wet tree, you're generating flame in under 30 seconds because you understood material properties. Now let's talk about dental floss. Not the shredding kind your dentist hates, the waxed nylon kind. Here's what they don't tell you about this little plastic container. You're carrying 300 feet of cordage that has a breaking strength of 12 to 15 pounds depending on the brand. Let me teach you something they don't cover in high school physics. Tensile strength matters more than diameter for most survival applications. You can't make a climbing rope out of dental floss, obviously, but you can make snare wire, tripwire for perimeter alarms, lashing for shelter construction, emergency stitches for wound closure when you're out of other options, fishing line if you're desperate enough. Here's the tactical application. You need to secure a tarp for overhead cover. Paracord would be great. You don't have paracord. You have dental floss. Triple strand it, twist it. Now you've got 45-pound test line that weighs nothing, fits in a pocket, and nobody thinks to confiscate or steal because it looks like toiletries. You want perimeter security on zero budget? String dental floss at ankle height between trees around your sleeping position. Attach empty cans with pebbles inside. Congratulations, you just built an early warning system that'll wake you up when someone trips it stumbling through the dark. While they're doing silent entry with night vision, you're getting a 3-second head start because you understood simple mechanical advantage. And here's the secret the preppers with their $500 med kits don't want to admit. Dental floss makes legitimate emergency sutures. It's nylon. It's strong. It's designed to slide between tight spaces without shredding. Is it surgical grade? No. Will it close a wound when you're bleeding and there's no hospital for 100 miles? Absolutely. Sterilize it with flame or alcohol. Use the thinnest needle you can find, or make one from a safety pin. Stitch it shut. You're buying time, moving on to something that makes people laugh until they need it. Condoms. Non-lubricated, non-spermicidal. Let's talk about what you're actually holding. This is a flexible waterproof barrier that can expand to hold 1 liter of water. That's not theory. That's what happens when you fill one up. Here's what I mean. You need emergency water storage. Your canteen is gone. Your Nalgene bottle shattered. You found a stream, but nothing to carry water in. Pull out a condom. Fill it carefully, because it's not puncture-resistant when expanded. Tie it off. You've got a liter of water in a package that weighs 3 grams empty. You can carry 6 of these in a pocket. That's 6 liters of carrying capacity on 2 ounces of storage weight. But here's where condoms become your multiplier. You need to keep tinder dry in wet conditions. You need to waterproof a phone or matches or a small first aid kit. Wrap it. Tie it. Now your fire-starting materials are protected from rain, from river crossings, from humidity that'll ruin paper and cotton. While everyone else has soggy gear that won't ignite, you're creating fire because you planned for moisture intrusion. And here's the kicker. You can make an expedient water filter using a condom, charcoal, sand, and gravel. It's not removing viruses, it's not removing all bacteria, but it's removing particulates and some pathogens through mechanical filtration. Is this your first choice? No. Is it better than drinking straight from a contaminated source? Run the numbers. Giardia takes a week to incapacitate you. Cholera takes hours. Clear water filtered through layers gives you better odds than cloudy water with visible sediment. Let's talk about crayons, the cheap wax ones from the dollar store. Here's what you're looking at. Compressed paraffin wax mixed with pigment. That paraffin is the same base material as the emergency candles people buy for $30 at REI. You paid $1 for 24 of them. A single crayon burns for approximately 30 minutes at a steady flame. You light the paper wrapper. It catches the wax. The wax becomes your fuel source. The crayon itself is the structure. You've got a makeshift candle that provides light and enough heat to warm your hands or heat a small amount of water for coffee or soup. Here's the tactical application. You need light in a shelter where open flame is risky. A crayon in a metal can gives you directional light with reduced fire hazard. It's not bright enough to read by. It's bright enough to navigate a dark room, to check your gear, to maintain your night vision better than a flashlight that'll die in 6 hours when the batteries run out. But here's where crayons become a force multiplier in cold weather. Wax burns hotter than wood by volume. You're trying to start a fire in freezing rain. Your kindling is damp. Your patience is gone. Light 3 crayons together. The combined heat output is enough to dry and ignite marginally wet wood that would never catch from just sparks. You're creating a thermal advantage that changes the equation from impossible to merely difficult. Now we get into chemistry that actually works. Steel wool and a 9-volt battery. This isn't survival folklore. This is electron flow creating resistance heating in iron fibers until they reach combustion temperature. Here's the physics. Steel wool has enormous surface area relative to its mass. Those thin iron strands have high electrical resistance. When you touch both terminals of a 9-volt battery to steel wool, you're forcing current through those high-resistance pathways. Resistance creates heat. Heat reaches iron's ignition point. Iron oxidizes rapidly. That's combustion. That's fire. Let me show you how this works for you. You've got no lighter, no matches, no ferro rod. You've got a smoke detector you pulled off a ceiling. That's your power source. You've got a steel wool pad from under a kitchen sink or from a workshop. That's your ignition medium. You tear off a small piece of the steel wool, not the whole pad. You touch the battery terminals to it. It glows orange. You blow on it gently. It bursts into flame. You drop that burning steel wool into your tinder bundle. You've got fire in under 10 seconds. While they're trying to start fires by rubbing sticks together like they saw on some survival show, You're generating reliable ignition using basic electrical principles and materials from any hardware store or household. And here's the part nobody talks about. Steel wool and battery fire starting works in wind, works in light rain if you protect the connection point, works at altitude, works in cold where butane lighters fail. The electrochemical reaction doesn't care about weather. It cares about completing a circuit and having oxygen available for combustion. Let me talk about garbage bags. The contractor-grade black ones, not the cheap kitchen bags that tear when you look at them. I'm talking about the 3mm thickness bags rated for construction debris. Here's what you're actually holding. A waterproof barrier that's 6 feet by 4 feet when opened. That's 24 square feet of shelter material, water collection surface, ground insulation, and emergency signaling. Here's what I mean. You need overhead protection from rain. You've got no tarp. You've got a garbage bag. Cut it open along the seams. Now you've got a flat sheet. Tie the corners to trees or stakes. You've got a roof that'll shed water for days before it degrades. It's not permanent. It's not pretty. But it's keeping you dry while everyone else is shivering in wet clothes, losing core temperature at a degree per hour. But garbage bags become your multiplier for ground insulation. Hypothermia kills from ground contact faster than from air temperature. The Earth is a heat sink at 55 degrees. Your body is trying to maintain 98.6. You're losing heat through conduction at a rate that'll drop you into hypothermia in hours. Put a garbage bag between you and the ground. Add leaves or pine needles on top for cushioning. You've just created a vapor barrier and thermal break that reduces ground heat loss by 60%. And here's the kicker for water collection. Rain falls. You need to collect it. Spread a bag in a depression. Weight the edges with rocks. Every inch of rain that falls on that 24 square feet of surface area becomes drinkable water after filtration. That's potentially gallons from a single storm. While they're dying of dehydration waiting for rescue, you're collecting precipitation because you understood surface area and gravity. Final item, Superglue, cyanoacrylate adhesive. Here's what they don't tell you. This was originally developed as a surgical adhesive. It bonds to organic tissue. It creates a waterproof seal. It's in your junk drawer right now. Here's the medical reality. You've got a laceration. Clean cut, not jagged. Not deep enough to need stitches, but too deep to leave open. Clean the wound. Dry it completely. Apply a thin line of superglue along the cut edges. Hold them together for 60 seconds. The cyanoacrylate polymerizes on contact with moisture in the tissue. It bonds. It seals. You've got a waterproof closure that'll hold for days. Is this FDA approved for wound closure? There's medical-grade cyanoacrylate that costs $50. There's hardware store superglue that costs $3. The chemistry is identical. The purity standards are different. In a survival situation where infection is already likely, you're making a calculated bet that sealed is better than open. But here's where superglue becomes essential for gear repair. Your boot sole delaminates. Your water bottle cracks. Your rain gear tears. One drop of cyanoacrylate creates a bond stronger than the original material in many cases. You're talking about adhesive that can handle hundreds of pounds of shear stress. That's not hyperbole. That's material science. While they're limping on failed footwear or discarding damaged equipment, you're field repairing critical gear with a substance that costs less than a cup of coffee and weighs half an ounce. Now let's have the conversation nobody wants to have. None of this makes you invincible. You can know every improvised technique. You can carry these items. You can practice these skills. You can still die because you made one wrong decision, or because luck ran out, or because someone faster and more desperate than you decided they wanted what you had. Here's the dark truth. Survival is about stacking small advantages until they compound into better odds. Not good odds. Better odds. A tampon doesn't guarantee you won't bleed out. It gives you a chance to apply pressure while you figure out the next move. Dental floss doesn't guarantee shelter. It gives you options for lashing when rope isn't available. A condom doesn't guarantee clean water. It gives you a container when everything else is gone. You're not preparing to win. You're preparing to not lose as fast as everyone else. There's no right answer. There's just trade-offs between bad options and worse options. Here's your choice right now. You can close this video and go back to scrolling. You can tell yourself you'd figure it out if it happened. You can be like the 99% who think survival is something that happens to other people. Or you can open a new tab right now. Order a box of tampons. Get waxed dental floss. Buy contractor bags. Spend $15 and have these items in your car, your office, your home. Actually test them. Fill a condom with water to see if it holds. Burn a crayon to see how long it lasts. Touch steel wool to a battery in a controlled environment to understand the technique. Map the pharmacies in your area. Note which ones have side entrances. Identify the hardware stores with the least foot traffic. Understand where these everyday items exist in your environment. Because when the grid goes down, when the supply chains collapse, when the pharmacies are already looted, the person who knows what to look for in the wreckage is the person who survives the first week. 99% won't do this. They'll watch. They'll nod. They'll forget by tomorrow. 1% will think about doing it. 0.1% will actually order the items and test the techniques. Be the 0.1%. Subscribe if you understand the difference between thinking and doing. Drop a comment with the unexpected item you're adding to your gear right now. Class dismissed.